my name is Ashley Frazier, and this is my interpersonal communication project for Human Services 508. And we're going to the introduction slide where communication is essential to life because you need to communicate in order to get what you want and get what you need. Communication helps build strong relationships as well as keep them strong. As far as basically communicating with parents, teachers, boyfriends, girlfriends, spouses, whoever, it's important to know how to talk to others. Communication can be verbal or nonverbal, which is very important because everybody can't speak verbally or everyone cannot communicate verbally. So, in order to communicate nonverbally, you could give looks, signals, anything. Communication begins with listening instead of hearing. Going to the next slide, my overarching goal is to become a leader at some point in time, become a social worker, more so of a case manager, helping people that are less fortunate than me, myself, or others, reduce domestic and teen violence in the community because that's on the rise, and encouraging others to pursue their dreams because I know today teenagers begin to think that they cannot be all that they can be, and that's not true. Going to the next slide, enlarging the conversation. Understand what's going on in the conversation. If you do not understand what's going on, then it's important to ask for clarity so that you will be able to engage more so in the conversation. Also, if you've seen that your conversation is getting dull, it's important to find common ground or find a common interest so that you will be more intrigued into the conversation. Encourage the other person to talk if you see that they are starting to become less interested in the conversation, then it'll be more helpful to ask for their more so opinions and ideas. Listening instead of hearing, as I said before, because everybody has a tendency to listen and not hear what the person is actually saying. So ways to improve that would be to ask questions and respond accordingly. Going to the next slide, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my background and my behavioral blend. I'm an African American female. As you can see, I'm 22 years of age. I have a son who is 2 years old. I have my degree in psychology, well, my bachelor's degree in psychology. My parents were divorced when I was about 12 years old, so that had an effect on me in the long run. My behavioral blend is ISC, which means I could either be reserved or more so outgoing, or I could, take control over situations, more so the situations I'll be more lenient towards. Going to the next slide, the positive effects of communication is basically to be quick to listen and slow to speak because sometimes people want people to basically listen to them instead of get advice from them. Frequently ask questions when you, like I said before, if you don't understand what's going on, it's important to ask questions so that you will not be lost and be looking like crazy. Encourage the other person to talk and ask for different perspectives in the conversation. And be very observant as far as when you're talking because basically you can communicate with someone, as I said, non-verbally, and you could watch their actions you can tell how they're feeling by their actions. Going to the next slide, negative effects that can affect communication is being judgmental or labeling someone when you do not know the whole situation, and that is a problem that I know most people have. Another negative effect would be accepting constructive criticism. When people tell you something, you should not be quick to be defensive, but more so be willing to accept what they were saying. Also, people hear instead of listen to what's going on, which can also cause potential conflict in the conversation or communication. Going to the next slide, we're talking about communication barriers, which where you will have selective hearing, which means you hear what you want to hear, or you're wishing that someone said something else, and that's what you think they heard, but that's not what they said. You have biased listening, whereas you do not basically you have an opinion about something on a situation before you even know the whole situation. Interrupting someone while they're talking can also cause communication barriers because if you have a tendency to do so, more so people will not want to engage in conversation with you. Just ask a question and be done. Physical barriers also different cultures, or by the way someone looks. Certain people don't want to communicate with you based off the fact that they're different colors than you, because different race, well, different genders and sexual orientations as well. Going to the next slide, we're going to talk about solutions to communication barriers, which I stated before, which would be clarity in the conversation, find a common interest as well, hold comments until the end of the conversation, as far as if you have a question about what was said, so that the talker can get everything that they want to say out. Think more so less about what I want, and more so about what the talker needs, and communicate when you're feeling at your utmost best, and not when you're sleepy or when the room temperature is cold or when loud noises are going on. Which actually brings us to our next slide, which talks about noise pollution, but the internal portion. Um, Noise pollution can include emotions, self-consciousness, dependent listening, and fake listening. Those are 4 examples I gave. Going to the next slide, I'll talk about solutions to these noise pollutions, which basically, if you tune out your emotions while you're talking to someone, then that can better help the conversation. Focus more on the talker instead of yourself, as I said before, because this can also help. This will make the talker want to talk to you more often. You can focus on what is being said instead of your feelings, because once you begin to put your feelings into a conversation, you will become more biased. And fake listening, just basically ask questions instead of nodding, saying yes, I understand, when you don't. Going to our next slide, I talk about noise pollution, which is external. It deals with appearance, whispers, loud noises, interruptions, and unfamiliar accents. Going to the next slide, the solution to the external noise pollution. Use eye contact when speaking with someone. No one wants to like wandering eyes when you're talking. And if you are experiencing someone whispering, ask the person to speak a little louder. Hold a conversation in a more quiet place. Turn your phone on silent, because ringing phones or phones vibrating in text messaging during conversation can be rude. And try to understand and ask for clarity, as I said before. Going to the next slide, we talk about language barriers in healthcare, which I got is as my first journal article. Language barriers are basically increasing in healthcare. There are courses that actually teach clinicians about language barriers. Um, Teaching interventions are high quality. Impact the use of non-English skills is monitored. Basically saying, make sure that when going into healthcare that you are well educated, and make sure that the teaching that the teaching of these courses are of quality, being that there are different barriers as far as in the healthcare, because I know it's a lot of different cultures and people that are non-English speaking people, and I know it's going to be hard to communicate with them, but somehow, some way, we have to communicate. Going to the next slide, we'll talk about communication and relationships, which is my second journal article, which is very imperative. Relationship adjustment may be linked to marital virtues, the need to move beyond a technical concept of functional marriage and relationship adjustment. Basically saying that communication skills depend on the personal qualities of a person that are involved in a relationship, regardless if it's casual or not casual. And you have to know the factors to encourage a positive relationship. Moving to the last slide, ways to improve interpersonal skills are to encourage speaking, even if there is conflict within the conversation. Listen actively, share your opinions, negotiate, and close out the conversation, and make sure you come to an agreement. And this is the end of my intercommunication project. Thank you.